This window here is the welcome screen for Adobe Illustrator CS3, and it will launch automatically every time you launch the application. Of course, I'll tell you how to get rid of this window so you can not see it when you launch, and then I'll show you how to get it back just in case you miss it. As you can see here, on the left column, we have the ability to open a recent item, and the items that you worked on last, of course, will appear in this list. Likewise, you can also click the Open folder here to navigate through your system to find a file you like to work with in Illustrator. On the right column, we have some presets here, and these are going to help you to create certain types of documents, such as a print document, a web document, a mobile device document, video, film, CMYK, which is good for going right to the press, and a basic RGB document, and this folder here, which will open up a template for you. Now you'll also notice that when I put my mouse over some of these, we see that we can hold down the Option key to skip the dialog box that will appear. For example, if I click Video and Film, you'll notice that the dialog box appears and asks us to enter parameters if we so desire. I'll cancel that, and this time I'll hold down the Option key, which would be the Alt key on Windows, and click Video and Film, and the document opens up for me without having that dialog box appear. And that's really what that will do for you. Let me go to the Help menu and go back to my welcome screen, because that's where it lives. And now I can also choose to open a file from a template that is provided by Adobe. And as you see, it's in a folder called Cool, Extras, Templates. And you have some basic documents in here, such as artistic, which include business cards, CD and DVD covers, portfolios, postcards. We have blank templates, which are good for banners and that kind of thing. Environmental for brochures, letterheads, event planning, film, and many more. We also have inspiration in here, so you can see some band things here, clubs, extreme sports, spas. They really went the extra mile to show you some documents that you can really bring into the application, and you can modify these at will. So I'll open up shopping bag, and it opens up the shopping bag, and as you see here, I can change it and I put it on my shopping bag, so it's kind of cool. So let's go back to the welcome screen dialog, and I'll tell you also how you can see some new features and access the help. So if I go ahead and click, for example, new features or resources or getting started, chances are it's going to open up the help viewer as you see here. And you can find out how to use the application on your own through these different categories here. So you can click work area, for example, and find out some of the categories you might be interested in, and click viewing artwork, about page tiling, and now you can find out about how to do these operations in Illustrator. Let me jump on back to Illustrator, and now I'll show you how to tell the dialog box not to appear when you launch the application. So you click here, Don't Show Again, and upon the next launch of Adobe Illustrator, the dialog box will not appear. But as I said before, if you do miss the dialog box and you do want it to launch, just go back to the Help menu at any time, choose Welcome Screen, and make sure you don't have this enabled, and the Adobe Illustrator CS3 welcome window will be there whenever you're ready. The document window is where you'll be performing your designing and illustration tasks in Adobe Illustrator CS3, and this area in the middle of the screen is pretty much it. But there's a lot more to this document window, and understanding how it works can really help you to get more enjoyment out of Illustrator. Now, I have taught Illustrator in New Jersey, and I've also discovered a strange propensity by some of my students to try to draw everything exactly where it belongs in the document. And they tend to forget that this is a computer, and in Illustrator, you don't have to draw everything on the exact location. Instead, you can put it on the side. I'm going to zoom out. And all I did was press Command or Control and the 0 key on my keyboard to zoom all the way out. You'll notice we have all this area here. This is your paste board. You can design all over the place in Illustrator, and then when you're ready to place your elements, you simply click and drag it where it belongs. It's pretty simple, actually. And I had to stop my class several times and say, "What are you doing?" They would take the tool and draw everything right where it belonged. I was like, that's not how you do it. You draw it somewhere else, and then you compose it and then you group it if you need to, and then place it where you want it to go. Now that we've talked about that, a way that I like to work, let's talk about some of the other elements in the document window. We have the scroll bars, which of course allows you to move around in your document. But as you see, it moves pretty fast. I tend to hold down the space bar instead and click and drag to move my document around. I can also zoom with my document properties here in this little arrow on the bottom left hand corner. And you can see I can zoom in as high as 6400%, which is pretty astronomical. Let's go ahead and do that now. So right now we're pretty much as far into the logo as we can get. And of course, this high end, I really can't do too much work. I can also choose to fit on screen, and I can zoom all the way out to 3.13%. And this is what the document looks like from the moon. So I'm going to go to the fit on screen option, and I'm also going to hold down the Command or Control key and hit the plus key on my keyboard to incrementally zoom in, or hitting the Command or Control key on my keyboard and hitting the negative key to zoom out. And once again, I'll hit the space bar to reposition manually my document. I can also use this arrow here down here to show different elements in my status bar on the bottom. So I can look at the current tool, the date and time. I can also look at the number of undos, and I can also reveal and bridge if I want to, or see a document color profile. So the document window in Adobe Illustrator is where you're going to perform your tasks of design and illustration. And once again, I highly recommend that you get into the habit of drawing your elements wherever you have space. So you can focus on that and then move it aside and do something else. And then when you're ready to compose everything, drag everything into position, and also take advantage of layers, which I will discuss in depth in upcoming lessons. Document profiles are handy ways to quickly access a custom file size that is provided for you by Illustrator. What we can do is go to File, New, and then you're presented with this new document window. And of course, you're able to name your document. And here is what we're talking about in this lesson, the new document profile. I'm going to go ahead and twirl down the advanced mode. As you can see, we can choose Print, and automatically it's going to jump to a size for you. And we can also change the units. I'm going to go to inches. Whenever I print, I like to use inches. And whenever I'm doing things for the web or for viewing on a TV screen or monitor, then I choose points. So as you see here, we have an 8.5 by 11 document. We can change the orientation from portrait to landscape. We can change the color mode to RGB or keep it in CMYK. We can change the effects mode so that the raster effects will have a very nice high resolution or a low resolution. And we can change the preview mode from pixel to overprint. What I can also do is go back to print and choose web. And as you see, Illustrator is smart enough to realize that we're going to be doing something for the web, and it changes the units to pixels for us. Now, when you're doing things for the web, you have to think in pixels instead of inches. For example, 800 pixels wide by 600 pixels in height. Now that's a pretty big image for the web. Normally you change the size to something for a photograph, for example, maybe 200 by 300 pixels or 200 by 100 pixels or that kind of thing, depending on where that image is going to be. If it's going to be on your home page, it might be this large actually for a splash page. Of course, you can always change the size at any time. The document profiles are just suggestions. It also has mobile and devices. So if you're going to work on your favorite phone and create a wallpaper, or you're going to do some kind of application, you can choose the size of the screen here in this list. Likewise, you can type that information in. And of course, since we are dealing with a screen, we are dealing with RGB and pixels. We can also work with video and film sizes. So we can choose from the North American standard, which is the NTSC. We can also choose to work with the European PAL format, and some of the really high-end and high-resolution HDTV, Cineon, and film. You can once again change the dimensions, and you are working on a screen, so you'll be dealing with pixels. And we can also work with basic CMYK, for working, let's say, for magazine artwork or for a cover, and basic RGB, which is mostly what you're going to be using for web design and for video games and that kind of thing. You can also, once again, change any of the color modes, the quality of the raster effects, and the preview mode at any time. The Tools panel is where you're going to access the tools that you'll be working with while you're creating your artwork in Illustrator. And the tools are broken off into distinct little chunks or groups. And as you see up here, we have these little boxes, and they are distinguishable because you see at the end and have a divider before the next set begins. Now let's start off with this section here. This is our selection tools group, and we're able to select objects with it, move objects with these tools, and decide what objects we want to affect. For example, if I want to change the color of this elf's cloak, I have to click on the cloak first, and using one of the selection tools to do that. Then I can change the color. If you don't select things, you won't be able to tell the computer what it is they're trying to change. Now, we also have some other tools in the tools group, and by the way, I will cover many of these tools in upcoming lessons, but I just wanted to let you know what these groups will do for you. We have the next set down from the selection tools, and these are going to be our drawing tools. So we have our pen, we have our type tool, we have our line segment tool, we also have shapes, and our pencil and brush. Down from this section, of course, we have our type tools, which even though they're in the same group as the drawing tool, if you hold the mouse down, you see that we have some tools in here. So this guy is a secret group that is living in another group undercover. We also have a section of painting tools, which once again is still attached to this same group here. So we have our paintbrush tool, and it also jumps down a little bit to this section here where we have our mesh tool and our gradient tool, also our eyedropper tool so we can choose colors, and other tools as well, such as the live paint bucket, which you'll see right here. Very cool tool. Now, of course, I did mention that we have these dividers, but hey, there are no rules even in the structure of this thing. So there are some distinct groups, and then there are groups that are all over the place. We also have some tools known as reshaping tools. And we have our rotation tool, we have our scaling tools, we also have other tools that will allow us to reflect things, to shear things, and to also reshape things as well. So that's what the reshaping group will do for you, as well as give you access to the warp tool. And when you hold your mouse down, we see that we have the twirl tool, pucker, and all kinds of other cool tools that help you to reshape your objects. We also have tools that will allow you to create symbols, which is located right here with this little paint can or spray can. We have all kinds of shape tools in there, or symbol tools available. We also have tools that will allow you to create graphs. Now I know that doesn't sound like an Illustrator kind of thing to do. It sounds more like a Microsoft Office kind of thing, but still, graphs are able to be created in Illustrator quite easily using the graph tools, and you can create everything from a regular stacked column all the way to pie charts. We also have tools that allow you to slice, cut, and crop, and they're located right here. And last but not least, we have tools that allow you to erase things, which you see the eraser tool, we have scissors, and the knife tool. I guess we could call this section the surgery section. And last but not least, the moving tools. So we can move things with the hand tool, and we can zoom in and out with the zoom tool. So that covers in a nutshell the tools panel and the tools that you'll be using in Adobe Illustrator CS3. Using Adobe Illustrator requires a knowledge of menus and panels. The menus range from the standard menu that we see on the top of most applications, as well as the menus that you'll see along the sides of many of the actual panels themselves. And these guys here are known as panels. Also known in other applications as palettes. You'll notice that we have this little icon here at the upper right hand corner of many panels, and they offer you other menus and options available to you for the specific panel or tool that you're currently working with. Let's start off with the main menu bar here. Of course, on a Macintosh, you'll access your preferences from here, whereas on a Windows PC, you will access your preferences from the Edit menu. So in the Illustrator menu on the Macintosh, you're able to hide Illustrator, quit Illustrator, and also find out about Illustrator. Under the File menu, you're able to create a new document, close a document, and perform most of your saving tasks. You're also able to print from the File menu. Edit, of course, allows you to cut, paste, clear, paste objects in front and in back of each other, which we'll talk about in another lesson. You can also check your spelling here and work with the custom dictionary. Under the Object menu, you're able to determine whether you want to lock objects, group them, ungroup, hide, show, and many other options. Type is pretty obvious. We're able to work with our fonts, our recent fonts, and we're able to find fonts and change the cases of fonts. So we can go to uppercase, lowercase, and so on. The Select menu allows you to select objects in your document. You can select all, deselect, and inverse a selection, which means to let go of the currently selected object and instead select what's not selected. Filters allow you to access many special effects, as well as the Effects menu. So these two we'll talk about later as well. The View menu allows you to look at your document in several different ways, as well as to show and hide certain elements, such as rulers, bounding boxes, guides, and more. The Window menu is where you're going to go to create workspaces, which we'll talk about in another lesson, and also to hide and show the panels that you wish to see or don't wish to see. For example, if I want to see actions, I select it, and now here it is. I can always get rid of it by clicking on the X, and I can always get it again by going back to this menu. And last but not least, Help, because no matter how bright you are with applications, you're always going to need help eventually. So those are the menus associated with the Illustrator interface itself. And once again, we have menus known as pop-up menus or drop-down menus along the sides of many of the panels. You can hide and show the panels very easily by clicking on the icon, or if you like, you can go ahead and click and drag to show the entire category. And you can also click this arrow to expand the panels. So these are the panels, and these are the menus in Adobe Illustrator CS3. The Control Panel, which is a context-sensitive set of options, lives right under the menu bar and above your document. And it will change based on what you have selected, because it's smart enough to know what you want to work with. I'm going to show you a demonstration based on the old-fashioned way of working. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the fill and the stroke of this circle. Now what I would do back in the day is, since the stroke icon is in a foreground and I want to change my fill, I'd have to hit X on my keyboard, and now I have the fill in front. So when I click on the swatch and I choose to change my color, that is what I'm working with. Now to get back to the stroke, I hit X again to bring the stroke icon to the front. So now I'm working on the stroke color, and I can change that to something else. Now when I want to change the size of the stroke or the width of this line, I have to click on the stroke panel and then change the width here. Now let's do the same thing using the Control Panel. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse that. Now if I want to change the size of the stroke, I can go right here and choose a weight. I can change the color by clicking right here, and I can change the fill by clicking right here. And that takes a lot less time than opening and closing panels, even if you do keep them open, and pressing X on the keyboard. So it's context sensitive and it knows what you need to work with. There are also other options up here, such as the ability to change your brush, the style you're working with, the opacity, and more. And I say more because, once again, if I choose something else, in this case, type, the options change. So I can change the character, which is the font that I'm working with. So I'll go ahead and choose something like Adobe Jensen Pro. And then what I could do is choose a style. So I'll go ahead and choose bold. And if I want to change the style, I can use this drop down to bold italic. I can change the size and everything from here. And when I'm finished with that and I want to work with the paragraph formatting, I can choose to align it in several different ways. So I can align left, center it right, and justify. And if I choose yet again something else, for example, a dotted line or anything else that I might want to put transparency on, then I can grab that object and then I can change the opacity of it. If I want to align objects, I can, for example, create a couple of objects here, and then I can select those objects, and then I can choose the align tools or the transform tools. So the control panel is going to be a one-stop shop for you to go to time and time again, as opposed to opening and closing panels if that's what you do when you have a smaller monitor. You can likewise keep the panels that you work with open and keep them on your screen at all times in their own dock if you want to as well. So I'm in icon view, but since the control panel knows what I want to do, and 9 times out of 10 I do want to change the fill or the stroke or the type, I can do everything right from here and work more efficiently than ever before in Illustrator CS3. When you're working on a document in Illustrator, it's a good idea to move around when necessary to focus on the areas of interest. So let's talk about some of the navigational options available to you, ranging from the very basic, which are scroll bars, to the hand tool, the space bar, and the navigator palette itself or panel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in with my zoom tool here. I go ahead and just grab this and zoom in like this. And I'm going to show you this tool here. This is called the hand tool. And when I click with this tool and I select it, I can move the document window by simply clicking and dragging to an area that I like to work on. What I can also do is work with the scroll bars here. So if you're zoomed in at a certain magnification, you can always use these, but as you can see, you don't have as much control as you will with the hand tool. It kind of goes kind of fast. What you can also do, if you're using any other tool, for example, let's say I have the selection tool here and I grab something and I want to, see what's down here, I can hold down the space bar and that activates the hand tool and I can move around in my document, let go of the space bar, and continue working. And this is the way I normally work. So I'll hit the space bar, move around, and so on. It's great because any tool you have selected will automatically turn off temporarily so you can enable the hand tool and move around. And it's a lot faster than going here over and over again. So that's a little shortcut that you might want to take advantage of. There's also another option available to you, and that, of course, entails the navigator panel. And as you see, we can see a thumbnail of the document in this little window here. What we also can do is zoom in and out using these controls. So we have this mountain range here, which will allow us to zoom out. We can also zoom in with this other mountain range. We can also use the slider to zoom in or out. And more interestingly is this little red box here. Whatever you're looking at now in your document is in this red box. So you can click and drag your mouse inside the red box to move around in your document very carefully. And you can always see exactly the zoom magnification right here, which is very helpful as well. This number always matches the number down here. So you can always zoom out or in as much as you like, and then use the navigator. And as you can see, that box got very, very small, where we're at 800%, to move around in our file. So let me go ahead and zoom back out to like maybe 300%. And notice that the box gets larger. And if I go to, let's see, 100%, the box gets larger still. So these are several techniques you can use to navigate throughout your document so you can focus on the areas that you need to work on. And once again, I suggest using the spacebar, since in my opinion, it's the fastest way to work. If you ever need to zoom in, just hit Z on the keyboard to access the zoom tool or the magnification tool, and then hit the H key to grab your hand tool again, or once again, the spacebar. Likewise, you can hit any of the other keys, such as V, to grab the selection tool, or A for the direct selection tool, and then while you're moving around your document, hit the spacebar to temporarily turn off those tools to move around. Adobe Illustrator gives you the ability to create your own custom workspaces. And those can be quite handy when there's a specific task that you wish to do or perform, and you don't want to be boggled down by having tools on your workspace that you really don't need at the moment. For example, in this project that I'm working on for a client, I'm specifically doing text for the design work. So I'm using typographical elements to create this design. So I might want to create a workspace that just gives me those types of tools. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just get rid of the tools I don't want to see here. For example, I have color. Of course, color is great, but for this example, I'm going to get rid of these tools here. And I'm going to get rid of swatches and brushes and symbols, and I'm just going to slowly just get rid of everybody here. And I'm going to bring in the tools that I want to work with. And of course, layers is always important to me. So I'm going to keep layers there. I'm going to go to the window menu and I'm going to choose type. And then when I choose my type tools, let me go ahead and just choose the character panel here. And I'm going to pull the panels apart like so. I'm going to drag that right to the bottom of my layers so I can have my layers available to me. I can also have my paragraph right underneath the character. And I'm going to put open type under there as well. So let's say that this is what I want to see for this particular project, and only those tools. Now I can go to the window menu, choose Workspace, choose Save Workspace, and then give it a name. So I've given it the name Type Tools. I'll click OK to accept that. And now when I go to my window menu and I choose, for example, Panel, that default workspace opens up. But let's say it's the next day or sometimes later that day and I want to work with just my type tools that I just created. Illustrator remembers what I did. It puts the panels that I want on the screen and only those panels. So that is really the main benefit to using a custom workspace. So you can focus on the tools that you want to work with and nothing else. You can also delete a workspace if so desired. We can go to the window menu, choose Workspace, choose Manage Workspaces, and then choose the workspace that we don't want, hit the garbage can, and that workspace is gone. Illustrator will not automatically assign another workspace for you. It won't automatically just put default back here again. It's going to keep the currently open workspace open for you. But you have to go to the window menu and then choose another workspace to then have Illustrator replace the old workspace with a new one. So, workspaces are a great way to have the tools that you need at hand available to you without cluttering your desktop with tools that you don't need at the moment. And I highly recommend you use this option because it can only increase the speed of your workflow. When you're working in Illustrator, you'll find that oftentimes you'll need more choices when it comes to applying strokes or applying brushes or anything else that has a library associated with it. Let me give you an example. I'm going to very quickly draw out a brush stroke, all right, that has a pattern applied to it. And you can find those right here, of course, with the brushes panel. And we'll talk more about how to create patterns and all that kind of great stuff later on in upcoming lessons. But let's say I want more options. Let's say I want to create an artistic stroke. And I'm like, all right, this is great, but I only have two choices. Where are more choices available? In a lot of the panels, you'll see on the bottom left-hand corner, library menus. In this case, we have a brush library menu. And I can choose artistic. And then I can choose to apply a stroke to my artwork based on what's in that library. And we have this very nice watercolory attribute applied to this brush. Now let me go ahead and show you something. I'll go to swatches. And once again, we have the same option down here, swatch libraries. And we can choose all kinds of categories and bring those into our Illustrator artwork. So let's say I want art history. I can choose ancient, and now I have a bunch of library choices to choose from and drag them right on into my swatches. Now, because I use the library, I have more choices available to me as far as swatch colors. So I want you guys to keep an eye out for panels that offer you this libraries option because it can make your Illustrator artwork even more unique because you're going to use more than what you just see here. You can go to the libraries now and add even more effects to your artwork. Every application has a way for you to efficiently find the tool that you want based on a hotkey or a shortcut on your keyboard. In some applications, they are called hotkeys. In some applications, they're called shortcuts, but they work in the same exact way. You can edit many of the shortcuts in the applications, and in this case, Illustrator, by going to the Edit menu and choosing all the way on the bottom here, Keyboard Shortcuts. Now, the reason you might want to do this is because you work with Illustrator, Photoshop, and another application that's similar, and you want to make sure that your most commonly used tools have the same shortcuts, if possible. Now, in my case, I use Lightwave 3D and ZBrush, and those applications have different shortcuts for different functions. So in one application, if I want to rotate, I have to press Y. In the other one, I have to press like R. So what I do is I make both of them Y in both applications. And that's just an example of why you might want to do this with your shortcuts. So when you open up the Keyboard Shortcuts dialog box, you're presented, of course, with all the shortcuts and the current shortcut and symbol. You can also change whether you're working with tool shortcuts or menu commands. Keep in mind, not everything can be modified. You can also have custom. So if you save a set of shortcuts, you can have a custom set that you can load at any time, and you can save the shortcuts that you create here as well. So I'm going to go back to Tools, and I just want to show you something here. Here is the tool, the selection tool, and the name of the tool. And over here is the currently assigned shortcut, which we know is V. Now we also know that the shortcut for the direct selection tool, or the white arrow right here, is A. So if I want to change the shortcut, I simply click where it says shortcut and I type a letter. If the shortcut is assigned to another shortcut, I'll be given a slap in the wrist right down here. So I'm going to press something like P. Now I already know that P goes to the pen tool. So Illustrator takes my hand and takes a ruler and thwack and says, hey, the shortcut P is already in use by the pen tool. You should know that, man. What's wrong with you? So if I do that, the pen tool shortcut will no longer be applicable. So I have to give the pen tool another shortcut. If I don't want to do that, I can simply undo, and it goes back to the way it was. So in a way, it's kind of safe. It gives you a little safety net, and it kind of guides you nice and gently and says, you can do this if you want to, but don't be surprised if in the midst of a project, you press P and nothing happens. So you can change it and save those shortcuts, and then you'll notice when I changed it or attempted to, automatically the set changes to custom instead of the Illustrator defaults. So once again, you're always going to be safe. You can go back to the defaults if you do change them, and you're never really going to be in trouble. So play around with the shortcuts, and once again, my recommendation is if you use like-minded applications and you're performing pretty much the same tasks, and in the example I gave you with the two 3D applications, feel free to match those shortcuts as closely as possible. But do be sure that if anyone else works at your station, you tell them, or even more politely, before you leave for the day, you put the Illustrator defaults back to the way they were, or reload the shortcuts so that the person behind you is not going to be completely confused. A few years ago, computer applications were easier to master because they had nowhere near the features or the options available to you today. And it's probably only going to get worse as developers try to give you more and more reasons to upgrade to the new software. Now, of course, you can always find more help as opposed to just using tutorials like these or the books in the bookstore by using the applications themselves. In this case, we can find help in the handy help menu located right here. The first option we have available is System Info. Now what we're looking at is some of the stuff that Adobe has installed. For example, plugins. And if I scroll up more, we'll eventually get to my system information, which is why I'm going to stop moving my mouse, because it has my login information and all that kinds of stuff. So what you would do is you would copy this information to the clipboard if need be and send it to Adobe or whoever you need to deal with so they can find out what's going on in your system as you give them more information about your problems if you're having any with your version of Illustrator or your computer itself. Also, of course, we talked about the welcome screen in another lesson, so I'm not going to go over that again, but once again, it has some great help for you. And we also have Illustrator Help, which will launch an application in a moment called the Adobe Help Viewer. And of course, you can choose from the Browse menu, Illustrator CS3, or any of the other applications you have installed in your Adobe suite. What I can do is look at the contents, click on the plus sign to expand this search area and find other topics that might be interesting to me. Or I can go to the index and look for things based alphabetically. And when I find a topic that interests me, such as file formats, I can go ahead and expand this, click on the option, and then read about it on the right-hand side. I can also find related topics down on the bottom here. And if I want to find this page on the web, I can click here and it will open the Help Resource Center on the internet. And that's helpful if you want to copy the Uniform Resource Locator, or the URL, or the address of the website, which all of those previous things I just said mean. Then you can paste it into an email and send it to yourself at work, and then continue searching the help resources online. We can also use these arrows here to go to topics. So as you can see, there are tons of ways to get help in Adobe Illustrator. So let me jump back to Illustrator. And we have some other choices here for you as well when it comes to registering your software. Activating, deactivating, and checking for updates, which by default, it should check for updates for you. I also have the option to deactivate this version of Illustrator on this computer if I want to transfer my copy to another machine. Now, these applications are only going to be accessible on one machine at a time per the licensing agreement when you purchase the application. So, if I want to use Illustrator on another computer, say I buy a new computer, I have to deactivate the license on this machine and then activate it on another machine. Before you go ahead and do that, I would definitely make sure you read any help notes and find out for sure what the procedure is for activating and deactivating your copy of Illustrator. Now, also, these are helpful when you're working with beta tests. I have the Adobe Creative Suite 3 beta, and I had to deactivate the beta before I can even activate this version of Illustrator on this machine. So once again, make sure you find out what these are going to do for you based on what's currently going on in Adobe.